India is often touted by its loud and proud netizens as one of the world's leading military powers, with its large standing army, modernizing arsenal and significant defense budget. With over 1.4 million active personnel and nuclear weapons at its disposal, the country's military is frequently ranked among the top 5 globally. However, it's time to burst the Indian netizens' bubble. Beneath the surface of impressive statistics and patriotic rhetoric lies a sobering reality. India's military, despite its sheer size, struggles with systemic inefficiencies, outdated equipment, bureaucratic red tape, and a lack of strategic focus. In many ways, India's military is often called a paper tiger, fearsome on paper but poor in practice. I will delve into the reasons why India's military strength is often overstated, exploring issues such as outdated equipment, poor defense procurement policies, internal politics, morale issues, and strategic weaknesses. Let's get into it. Outdated equipment. One of the most glaring issues with India's military is its reliance on outdated equipment. Despite ambitious modernization plans, a significant portion of India's arsenal is decades old. The Indian Air Force, for instance, still operates MiG-21 fighter jets, dubbed flying coffins due to their alarming crash rate. These planes, first inducted in the 1960s, are woefully inadequate for modern aerial combat. They are trying to fight tomorrow's wars with yesterday's equipment, and it won't end well. India's MiG-21s are so old that even their retirement papers are collecting dust. Remember a few weeks ago? The IAF had 2 accidents on the same day. What a terrible indictment on the IAF. The situation isn't much better for the Army and Navy. Infantry soldiers often lack modern rifles, relying on INSUS rifles that are infamous for jamming. Meanwhile, the Navy's submarine fleet is aging, with some vessels older than the sailors operating them. In a hypothetical conflict against a technologically advanced adversary, China, for example, India's outdated equipment could quickly become a liability rather than an asset. Never forget what happened at Aksai Chin when China stormed the area, rushed the Indian forces, caught them with their pants down, and forced them to surrender all in 1 month. Defense procurement. India's defense procurement process is infamous for its inefficiency, delays, and corruption, just like everything else in India. The country has long struggled to acquire modern equipment in a timely manner, with many deals mired in red tape and political controversies. For example, the Rafale fighter jet deal with France took over a decade to finalize, during which time the IAF's operational readiness suffered, and the planes themselves became somewhat outdated. At least they have a strong domestic production of curry powder, which they can throw into their enemies' eyes to blind them. The lack of a clear strategy in defense acquisitions further compounds the problem. India often purchases equipment on an ad hoc basis, rather than as part of a cohesive modernization plan. This piecemeal approach leaves gaps in capabilities, making it difficult for the military to operate effectively in a coordinated manner. It's only made worse in recent times under Modi. He bows down to Trump and agrees to buy crap Boeing fighter jets, just because he's afraid of tariffs. This will not turn out well for India. Dependence on imports. India is one of the world's largest importers of defense equipment, relying heavily on foreign suppliers for everything from fighter jets to submarines. This dependence undermines the country's strategic autonomy, as it cannot sustain prolonged conflicts without continued support from external suppliers. In contrast, countries like China and the United States have robust domestic defense industries, enabling them to produce and maintain their own weapons systems, artillery, drones, and whatnot. A few years ago, Modi shouted from the rooftops about his Make in India tanks. Turns out most of the parts come from Russia. Even their prized aircraft carrier is made of parts mostly from Russia, Italy, and many other nations. This obviously is unsustainable and a glaring weakness for India if it ever needs to repair or manufacture its own aircraft carriers. Efforts to boost domestic defense production have been slow and riddled with challenges. The state-owned Defense Research and Development Organization has often been criticized for delays and subpar results, with projects like the Arjun tank and Tejas fighter jet taking decades to materialize. Internal politics and corruption are significant factors that weaken India's military. From favoritism in promotions to scandals in procurement deals, Political interference often hampers the armed forces' operational effectiveness. High-profile scandals, such as the Bofors scandal in the 1980s and the Augusta Westland helicopter scam, have damaged the military's reputation and eroded public trust. The politicization of the military also extends to operational decisions. Political leaders often prioritize optics and electoral gains over military strategy, which can lead to poorly planned operations and unnecessary risks. For example, the Balakot airstrike in 2019 was widely publicized as a show of strength, but its actual impact on Pakistan's militant infrastructure remains questionable. India's military strategy suffers from a lack of coherence and long-term planning. The country faces multiple security challenges, including border disputes with China and Pakistan, insurgencies in the northeast, and terrorism in Kashmir. However, the armed forces often operate in silos, with little coordination between the army, navy, and air force. As the joke goes, India's military strategy is like its traffic, chaotic, uncoordinated, and somehow still moving. The absence of a unified theater command system further hampers the military's ability to respond effectively to threats. While other major powers have adopted integrated command structures to streamline operations, India's armed forces remain divided by service branches, each pursuing its own priorities. This also plays into the soldiers having poor morale. Despite the patriotic fervor often associated with India's armed forces, especially the angry, loud netizens, many soldiers and officers face low morale due to poor working conditions, inadequate pay, and a lack of modern amenities. The rank and file often operate in harsh conditions without sufficient support, while officers complain of bureaucratic micromanagement and limited career growth opportunities. The problem is particularly acute in the paramilitary forces, which are frequently deployed in counterinsurgency operations without sufficient rest or resources. High suicide rates and cases of fratricide among personnel highlight the psychological toll of these challenges. India's geographic location presents unique challenges, with hostile neighbors on both its western and northern borders. The ongoing border standoff with China in eastern Ladakh and frequent skirmishes with Pakistan along the line of control stretch the military thin. While India's size and population give it an advantage in theory, its inability to decisively resolve these conflicts exposes its strategic vulnerabilities. The 2020 Galwan Valley clash with China highlighted the limitations of India's military preparedness, as poorly equipped soldiers found themselves facing a superior adversary and getting curb-stomped by China. Similarly, despite decades of counterinsurgency operations in Kashmir, the situation remains far from resolved. China also hems in India when you realize that they have good relations with neighboring countries and access to Sri Lanka's and Pakistan's seaport. This, along with the belt and road which surrounds the north of India, is a geopolitical sandwich in which India is the delicious curry sauce. India's military, despite its massive size and resources, faces significant challenges that undermine its effectiveness. Outdated equipment, bureaucratic inefficiencies, corruption, low morale, and a lack of strategic focus all contribute to its reputation as a paper tiger. While the country has made some progress in addressing these issues, much work remains to be done. Modi and his BJP buddies are not the ones fixing this. They're only interested in themselves. For India to truly become a global military power, it must move beyond patriotic shouting and focus on meaningful reforms. Until then, the image of India's military as a formidable force will remain quite literally just that, an image. If you enjoyed this video, then please like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.